It's the Security Weekly News. It's episode 391 of the Security Weekly News, and it's Friday, the 7th of June. We got Burning AI, Lockbit, Veeam, or however you say that, Club Penguin, Kali, Commando Cat, HugeGraph, Aaran Leyland, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
All right, from the island of Elba, it's the Security Weekly News, episode 391. I'm Doug White. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, because if we get enough clicks, we will get fed again. So, keep that in mind. Hi, Jim. It was great to see you yesterday if you are watching. All right. The FBI is urging victims of Lockbit ransomware to come forward, as according to them, they have obtained over 7,000 Lockbit decryption keys. So, you might want to check in if you have stuff that's been encrypted with Lockbit. At the Boston's conference on cybersecurity this week, they made the announcement that, quote, from our ongoing disruption of Lockbit, we now have over 7,000 decryption keys and can help victims reclaim their data and get back online. They said they're reaching out to known victims. So I guess if you reported it, the FBI, they're contacting people. But they also said you can check in at their Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is called ic3.gov, and get information. The keys were recovered as a result of their takedown of Lockbit infrastructure back in February of this year. And in the initial action, which was a worldwide action, but it was called Operation Kronos or something like that, they seized 34 servers, which already had 2,500 decryption keys. And that led them to build what is called Lockbit 3.0 Black Ransomware Decryptor. The U.S. Justice Department and the U.K. National Crime Agency estimated that the Lockbit gang, and their affiliates have raked in up to about $1 billion with a B dollars in ransoms following 7,000 attacks targeting organizations worldwide between June of 2022 and February of 2024. I am definitely in the wrong line of work. I could just be sitting here all day, ransomwaring people and going, yes, you must pay me. Ha, 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 ha. I guess there's always that outside chance that you get arrested and put in prison, which is probably not what you want to. You want to go to prison and go, yeah, I'm a coder. Or just like, no, it's like, well, what did you do? It's like, oh yeah, I killed and ate 14 people. Like that would be the cellmate I would get, of course. But anyway, numerous members of Lockbit have been arrested in the past, and the U.S. State Department is offering, just for all of you out there, the State Department of the United States is offering $10 million with an M dollars for any information that would lead to the arrest of Lockbit leadership, if they will give you $5 million reward for tips leading to the arrest of Lockbit ransomware affiliates. So I guess I should just be like, a detective chasing down Lockbit leaders and try to make $10 million. But hey, a lot of you are good at that. Go out there and find them and make yourself some serious money and send me 10% for letting you know about it. Yeah, I bet. Speaking of ransomware, a new study from Veeam came out and found that ransomware victims permanently lose 43% of their data on average in an attack based on their study group. Now, not that I'm being skeptical, but Veeam is a backup company, so when I see reports from like a backup company, showing you how bad it really is, it's kind of like those reports that say 9 out of 10 heavy smokers are actually healthier than non-smokers. Source, the Tobacco Council. And I'm not even making that kind of stuff up. They used to do that all the time. Sorry, Veeam. Actually, though, you'll see. I probably should read further into the report before getting all judgy. And of course I have already read it now, so we're getting sort of a temporal problem here. And I do know that the report actually seems to be pretty legit, so it's not really like that. But anyway, the Veeam ransomware trends report for this year is based on a survey of 1,200 CISOs and other security professionals, along with backup administrators who experienced a ransomware attack in 2023. Now, I don't know how they defined that group or how they sampled or all that kind of stuff, but we won't worry about it. But that sounds a lot better than 9 out of 10 heavy smokers. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. Well, backup repository, according to this report, there's a lot of other details in the report we don't have time to cover. So if you want to read it, there's a link to it. But backup repositories were targeted in 96% of attacks, makes sense. And they were successfully breached in 76% of those cases. So that actually makes the report sound a lot more legitimate to me. So, I mean, now think about this. Me telling you for years and years and years and years and years that you should have out-of-band backups that aren't connected. Well, there it is. But basically, the report said the attack will be worse than you imagine and cost more than you were expecting. I could have told you that too. 81% of the organizations reported they paid a ransom. So this is a disturbing trend, is that, the more people who pay ransoms, the more ransoms are going to need to be paid. I mean, that's just how crime works. Only 67% of the 81% who paid ransoms actually got their data back because, criminals. So when criminals call you and say, pay me a ransom and I'll give you this, give you your car back, and you pay it, they're criminals. So I'm sure there were some of those in there too, where they say, well, now how much would you pay? Well, you'll pay this much. 15% of the respondents, only 15%, said they did not pay a ransom and they were able to recover their data. So you can see why the trend goes the way it does, right? 15% of the people refused to pay, and only, it wasn't clear to me exactly what that number was. A Coveware report said that the average ransomware payment in Q4 of 2023 was $568,000. I am definitely in the wrong business. Yeah, I need to get more ruthless, right? And I'm going to go out and go after, hospitals and animal shelters and schools I'm not even going to say all that stuff. But my average take in Q4 2023 was $9 and some old used socks. I mean, is that a Dobby reference or a Hobbit reference? Do hobbits have socks? No, I don't think so. Hobbits don't wear socks. Dobby wanted socks. Hobbits did not. Anyway, the survey indicated that cyber insurance was not always an effective cost recovery solution, with only 65% of the respondents who used their insurance to cover the cost, despite 86% of them reporting that they could have done so. 21% paid the ransom without making a claim to their insurance provider. Curiouser and curiouser. I guess when the insurance costs more than the damages or something, I get one big takeaway here to me would be you probably should review your insurance policies, because if you're not going to use it, is it worth having? If your deductible is so high or whatever, and you're paying for it, and then when something actually happens, you can't actually use it, is it really worth having? I mean, it's kind of like, when you don't file a claim because that would just get the rates raised on your car. So you're sort of like, why do I have insurance in the first place? I mean, I used to have a car like that. And I finally, my insurance agent even called me and said, why are you insuring this car? It's not worth having. The insurance costs more than the value of the car. So I don't know. Anyway, it's a very interesting report, and I think it seemed like a decent and fair treatment. So sorry for that crack earlier, Veeam. I mean, it seems like they actually did a pretty good study here. So they do go on and talk about out-of-band backups and how you should have those, and maybe you should also have $500,000 in a cigar box for a rainy day, because I wouldn't keep it in an online account or in Bitcoin on your company network. That may get taken out too, right? So you may need to just have, say $568,000 in a cigar box in a safe or something that's not a digital safe. Get the combination lock kind. And don't put the combination in like your files, because you won't be able to get them. Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, sure. I'm scared of ransomware, and you should be too. Club Penguin rules. Yeah, Club Penguin. I spent a lot of time on that with my daughter when she was about 4. Club Penguin, if you aren't familiar with it, is a former independent, but now a Disney system. And fans hacked a Disney Confluence server to steal information about the game, but they also managed somehow to steal 2.5 gigs of internal corporate data and other stuff. Now, now, can I just for a second, can I just, say I'm a fan of Acme Bank break in and steal a bunch of stuff and say, oops? The game itself, the Club Penguin website, shut down in 2018 after Disney took it over, and it was originally a virtual world that was created by New Horizon Interactive. It seemed to be targeted at fairly young kids, and my daughter asked me about it. I went in, we checked it all out to see how safe it was. Can people, and it was pretty safe at the time. This was probably, it was probably way back in the early days of it. So my daughter wasn't 4. I think it only started in 2007. So she was probably like 6 or 7 years old. But then it got bought by Disney. Eventually got shut down. But the game was so popular with fans that a lot of people kept running private servers. This sounded like something from the old days. Like, I put up a bulletin board and I'm going to run this. But Disney, being Disney, went after one of these, why? They went after one of these called Club Penguin Rewritten, had its operators arrested because, we don't want it. We're not going to run it, but you can't have it either. I remember Disney threatening this nice little student I had from Korea. And I felt so bad because the student had put mouse ears on a website they had created. And this is in like 1998, right? So it had like 11 visitors to it. And Disney sent her this incredibly threatening letter saying, she was going to be put in prison. She was going to be sued for everything she owned. Very super nasty. I mean, the letter literally made it sound like the student was maybe a threat to humanity itself. You gotta love those guys, right? But anyway, apparently thousands of people were still engaging with Club Penguin on private servers, which sounds creepy, but they were. And at least until Disney sends in a guy in a Donald Duck suit with a ball bat and a blowtorch to straighten them out. I mean, the latest incident started with an anonymous upload to 4chan with the statement, "I no longer need these." That link was to a 415 meg archive that had 137 PDFs that had old info about the club with emails and design schema and all this kind of. It was nothing really, it was stuff that anybody could have got. But the data was 7 years old. But this is part of a much larger data set that was taken from Disney. Now, according to another anonymous source, the servers were, quote, hacked using previously exposed credentials, which I don't really call a hack myself, but I get it. I mean, you think the mafia is bad? Try being an informant against Disney. Their thugs make Luca Brasi look like Bambi when they come for you. I mean, it's like leave the gun, take the cannoli kind of stuff. Or that scene in Casino where Joe Pesci puts somebody's head in a vice and their eyes pop out. Yeah, that's just getting started. But anywho, the data that was seen included documentation on a wide variety of initiatives and projects internal to Disney, as well as developer tools named Helios and Communicore. That sounds bad, but bad name. Bad. Like, I'm sorry, sir, you have Communicore and it's not curable. Yeah. But anyway, a lot of stuff there, but wow, Club Penguin. And when I saw that name, I was like, what? Oh, wow, that's ancient. A new version of Kali Linux was released with 18 new tools, and this is version 2024.2 and also has fixes for the Y2038 bug. Now, I actually use this story as a way to rant about the Y2038 bug and tell you about it. Now, you may remember the Y2K problem, and you may already know what the Y2038 bug is, but some people don't. But the Y2K problem was caused by old-time programmers like me, leaving only the last 2 digits of the year instead of putting in the whole year, because none of us could conceptualize the year 2000 at that point. So little old me when I was 14 back in 1977, I never considered anything like that. I was just trying to save bytes. And causing, of course, that thing translated to mass chaos in around 1997 when the news media got hold of it and started, wanting people to talk about planes crashing in the end of the world and Ed Jordan and all that kind of crazy nonsense. But this was not the same really as to the 2038 problem. I mean, the 2038 problem, I think, is of a similar source in that it was originally a kind of naive assumption about it that now is going to translate into problems later. So Y2038 is an issue with what's called epic time. And some of you will be going, yeah, Doug, I think I know what epic time is, but some people out there don't. So, and if you want to get into discussions of time with quantum physicists and so forth, I highly recommend a healthy supply of quality alcohol first. But this is not really one of those, oh, wow, man, like time just keeps going, but it's really already happened. And if you're like an outside observer of the universe, man, you see all time in a like single 2-dimensional point. Is that what you're saying, man? But, unlike that, this problem's pretty fathomable by most of us. So epoch time measures time in seconds elapsed since an arbitrary date. Specifically, that arbitrary date was 0000 hours UTC on 1 January 1970. And it's an arbitrary date because somebody just picked it. They just said, okay, why not use this date? Now, the problem starts because pretty much like the Y2K problem, no one way back then when they were first setting up Unix and so forth really thought that, this would still be an issue that far out into the future, but they used a signed 32-bit integer. So essentially, if you aren't up on your space like that, a signed 32-bit integer would be -2 to the 31st or 2 to the 31st numbers. And I had our wonderful interns here at Security Weekly crunch the numbers on their abacus because we won't let them use calculators because batteries and electricity cost money, suckers. But that if you calculate that number out, it's 2,147,483,648, which really doesn't sound that big when you're talking about seconds, right? I mean, seconds, tick, 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 seconds. So it doesn't sound like that big of a space, but back in like the 70s, that was a pretty big, number for most systems. So the last date that time can be recorded before this runs out of space is actually 31. Wait, what is this? I'm sorry, 03/14/07 UTC on the 19th of January, 2038. So 3:00 in the morning UTC time, 19th of January, 2038. That runs out. Dun, dun, dun. So what happens? Now with Y2K, it was date math that caused all the problems. But when this one happens, basically, and it depends on the system, but most systems are going to overflow, which basically flips it around to the negative end of this thing and starts, I think, counting backwards. Maybe I would have to test it to see exactly what happens on my system, but and I'm not trying to start hysteria, but it would cause some chaos since that overrun wraps around to -2 to the 31st, which is 2045 hours and 52 seconds on the 13th of December 1901. Dun, dun, dun. I don't even, why did they have I guess so you could be before 1970. Yeah. But anyway, can somebody get me a TARDIS or something, or at least call the doctor, please? I mean, who knows what will happen, but we are going to have to fix it, or a bunch of consultants are going to make a lot of money in 2036, just like a bunch of consultants made a lot of money in 1997 from fixing those Y2K problems. But anyway, Kali added a whole bunch of packages if you're interested, and they did fix this bug. So at least you can still use Kali Linux after that date. Yeah, sorry, that was a long one. Commando Cat, a great name, is an attacker that's linked to an ongoing cryptojacking attack on Dockers. I had a Commando Cat once. His name was Dr. G. He was a mighty hunter and provider of all the chipmunks we could eat. But yeah, we call those the good years. My current cat's stinky and worthless, can't even catch a mouse when it's like standing right in front of them. I literally saw that. They were looking at it, but they were just kind of like, what do we do with this? Anyway, Commando Cat's been linked to a cryptojacking attack that leverages poorly secured Docker instances and deploys crypto miners. Poorly secured Docker containers? Oh, come on, no way. But Trend Micro said that the attacker used the command.cat/chattr Docker image container to retrieve payloads from their command and control infrastructure. So this was a benign Docker that then they were able to utilize to exploit and import cryptojackers. So Commando Cat used that open source Commando project to generate a benign container that was first seen by Cato earlier this year. The attacks target misconfigured Docker remote API servers to deploy the chattr image on those systems, and that instantiates a container, which then breaks out of the confines of the chroot and gains access to the host environment. Yikes. The last step in this process downloads a minor binary using curl or wget from leetdbs. This was sort of the real meat of it. leetdbs.anondns.net/z. So you might want to add that to some of your watch lists, and it uses a shell script to do that. So hopefully you're controlling all that in your Docker environments, but if you aren't, you may want to. The binary was called Ziggy Start StarTux, Ziggy StarTux, which is an open source IRC bot based on Kai-10 malware. Nice Bowie reference too. I really like it. But there are a lot more details, I mean, to the nth degree about how this works in the article. But I guess from my perspective, protect your Docker environment. So you have people doing these, and a lot of times people think, well, they're ephemeral, so they're not really that risky. But don't assume they're secure. I mean, that is a very naive and dangerous thing to do. I mean, basically nothing is secure, and everything is on your threat surface. Sorry, I didn't want to ruin your day, but you know. Apache HugeGraph was patched in April, and 2 proof-of-concept exploits for it were recently published. The exploit is a 9.8 CVSS-rated remote command execution bug in the open-source graph database, and we all know what that means. Now, any 8-year-old with a laptop can ruin your whole day, or week, or month, or year. That's a song lyric, right? Oh, it's from Friends. A week, a month. Yeah, I think so. All right. I'll be there for you. Yeah. By a very one-hit wonder band. But Apache HugeGraph is a tool that allows developers to build applications based on graph databases and is commonly running in Java 8 and Java 11 environments. So you may want to make sure you don't have, or if you have this thing, you've patched it. The vulnerability was disclosed in April by Apache Software Foundation and was patched at that time. Everyone is advised to patch this quickly if you are using it because, once there is a public proof of concept, that means anybody can take it and start exploiting it. So expect it to be exploited soon. There is a link to a massively detailed article on there that includes the proof of concept code in the show notes. So if you want to check that out, you like that kind of stuff. That analysis was from Secure Layer 7 blog and has source code. It has everything you might want to need about that. And if you like that kind of thing, you probably enjoy examining it. But if you don't want to read about it, just patch it, please. Now, I have several artist friends in the real world, and one of them makes things out of old highway signs and subway signs, which is really cool and is actually quite well known. And the other one makes cool clothes. So they aren't really at risk from AI. But painters and photographers seem to be really getting up in arms about all this. And this, in the modern age, a lot of things we publish are going to be on social media if you're pasting things into social media. And I kind of want to extend this story, which was really about artists and photographers. But I think that just from a business perspective, if you've got people posting things to social media, including writing or video, blogs or whatever, they may be subject to this. Now, the story, like I said, is about painters and photographers running away from Instagram to avoid having their work dumped into Meta's AI training models. Now, Meta owns Instagram, obviously, and so anything you put up on Meta /Facebook/Instagram may well be being dumped into their training databases. And so song lyrics, poems, papers about running dog capitalists, whatever. And since social media parent companies all have AI platforms that you use to train those AIs, you need data. Now, I think Elon Musk proposed just taking your brain out of your skull, pureeing it into a fine slurry, exposing it to gamma radiation, and injecting it into a reconstituted velociraptor or something like that. But the others, well, their AIs are hungry down in the cellar, really, really, and they really want to eat. So social media is scraping everything into the slurry hopper and feeding it to the hulking thing in the basement. Now, a Meta executive triggered all this by stating in May that the company considers public Instagram posts part of their training data. Yeah, not a great thing to say. And then a few weeks later told users in Europe that their posts would be used to train AI starting on 26 June of this year. Now, there's no opt-out. But the EU, unlike the US, does allow disputes about this. So I'm guessing, at least in the EU, it'll be tied up in court. In the US, you're screwed because we have zero privacy regulation because we're too busy worrying about birth control or something like that. But that won't help anybody. I'm going to tell you. You can sue them till you're blue. They're going to eat your data. So, I mean, honestly, if you write a song, and I've written a few bad ones on the backs of old posters for some local band like Infected Colon that I tore down from a creosote light pole, if you know what those things are. And, you put that song on social media, well, your lyrics, your music, everything about it may start to show up in some AI's fever dream. I'd be kind of flattered personally, but, for real artists. But it's worse for media artists, I think, because AI is really good at emulating style and form. So could an AI come up with something like the Garden of Earthly Delights? I mean, could it? I don't think so originally, but it could copy it and it could damn sure copy the style. So could an AI write Breakfast of Champions? I don't know. I miss you, Kurt. But it could copy that style of Kurt Vonnegut and I think maybe produce something else. So much like Stephen King ripping himself off to pose as Richard Bachman, it's kind of complicated. Could you just ask the AI to create a new Nirvana album and produce songs that sound like Nirvana based on the work of the real Nirvana? I don't know. I mean, and would that be bad? It would be bad for, Dave Grohl. I mean, he probably would like the money from that if nothing else, although he doesn't seem that money hungry. But I mean, I don't know. And at this point, I don't think AI is going to replace Boris's work or come up with something better than Bosch. But where does that all lead? I mean, if Meta or any other platform can digest all your work and then sell that work and cut you out of the deal altogether, or offer you the scraps from the table after Zuck finishes buying the state of California or whatever, well, then, I'm not what we're going to be left with, just a regurgitation of the past for art. But at the same time, isn't that kind of what's been happening all along? I mean, Caravaggio, one of my favorite painters, influenced Rubens, Bernini, Rembrandt, and was trained by other painters. So maybe the AI doesn't just replace art, it just adds to it and becomes its own artist in its own right. But the problem is, even when Caravaggio was shilling for other artists and was not famous, he was probably at least getting, food for dinner. And, when he was doing all this work, for these other famous artists who didn't have time to paint all the flowers in the background or whatever. But then again, somebody else was probably copying him and not giving him credit for it to this day. I mean, it's a complicated issue to me because artists copy other artists. They learn from other artists. And I'm not saying they're stealing their work. I'm just, so I don't know. But I do think this is going to be a huge legal and security problem for companies. I mean, if you have a slogan or a logo or whatever, and it gets into the training sets, and then a lot of other stuff starts looking like your logo, it can be a real lawsuit tongue twister out there in a couple of years. So despite all the fears, start thinking about policy on this ASAP. Sorry, I went on a long, long time. Well, he's rolling thunder and pouring rain, coming on like a hurricane. It's Aaran Leyland. Please welcome Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaron.
Can anybody tell that we were off for a week and Doug's trying to fit in double the words this week into a short show?
I think I really did. Yeah, I went a little off today.
Well, if everybody just sticks with it and we'll extend the show by 3 or 4 minutes, I promise it'll be worthwhile, as Doug is going to knock it out of the park on the final story. There you go, Doug, teeing you up for failure, maybe. Okay, let's go. This is a story that goes round and round and round. I'm sure there's a song about that as well. Major cyber attack causes chaos at London's NHS hospitals. It'll never stop. Okay, and more ransomware as well. A significant ransomware attack believed to be orchestrated by Russian attackers, pesky Russian attackers everywhere, targeted Synovis, a lab service provider for the NHS, causing widespread disruption across 7 London hospitals. It really was quite bad, to be honest. The group behind the attack, known as Killing, and whoever spelt a Q without a U and an I and an L and an I and an N, you don't speak English, do you? Okay, has a history of global attacks and demanded a ransom to restore access to compromised systems. There we go. Although it is bad, so the attack led to the cancellation of operations, including a critical kidney transplant for a baby, and we all love babies. It's expected to have long-lasting effects, and it's going to take weeks to resolve. Knowing the NHS and the amount of systems they have and how complicated it is really going to reverberate around, and it's super bad. Okay, there's a movie for you. The cyber criminals exploited vulnerabilities in the IT systems to insert the ransomware, obviously locking down the systems and then demanding payment, which is super, super interesting and goes back to what Doug said, but I can't talk about it too much because the show's going to be massive. But if you watch or look at the book, The Ransomware Hunting Team, they'll go into how the ransomware teams were going in, looking at the documents, finding the insurance documents, seeing how much they can actually pay. And then when people tried to bargain with them, they were like, hey, apparently no, because we know what your insurance is. So give us the big bucks. Really interesting book, loads of fun characters and interesting people in that book. Okay, highlighting trend, ransomware's gangs collaborating with access brokers. You actually don't hear this term very much, but you do hear it. And it's using them, I'll talk about it in a minute, to identify and exploit system weaknesses. So the attack on Synovus disrupted the hospital operations, but also posing a risk to sensitive data being published online. Because as we know, these ransomware gangs are like, oh yeah, we'll shut you down, but we also scraped all your data and give us more money or whatever derivative that is, or we're just going to publish it online. And think of all the like HIPAA, you call it, all the sensitive data that the NHS holds. Okay, so huge data sets, super attractive, loads of security challenges. So NHS is massive. Actually, I have a little bit about this before I go into it, before the bit I wrote. Anyway, stark reminders, constant vigilance, regular updates, but ethical considerations on paying ransoms, right? It's like, it's just, Doug talked about it earlier. It's, do we pay? Do we not pay? If you pay, you set yourself up, self-prophesizing. They look more. Would I pay? Would I not pay? Well, I do a cost-benefit analysis as long as it wasn't breaking the law. And if it was literally between saving people's lives on the NHS, getting it up and running to the cost, how can you put a cost on people's lives? Although we do. I've seen the movie. Maybe I would pay. I think a part of the answer to this is actually maybe making it illegal. So it makes it harder for people to pay. And does it shift it somewhere else? That's a longer conversation. I had loads of stuff on this. None of it was superly important. But let's just jump to the conclusion. So the recent cyber attacks on London's NHS hospitals, critical learning opportunity. The British government this week were like, oh yeah, we're coming up to an election. It's in like 4 to 6 weeks time. What we'll do is we'll chop £9, so about $12 off a veteran's sort of travel card and give them £9 and that'll make them vote for us. Well, I tell you what will make us vote for you, and I'll speak for all veterans here. Look at the cyber attacks in the NHS and put some more money into the NHS. You can keep your £9 a year. I don't want it. Okay. Anyway, I have bought all the ingredients, if you can't tell, to make margaritas, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Peace out, party people, and back to Doug in the home studio.
Thank you, Aaron. I think the veteran thing, I'm not a veteran, but I think the veteran thing in the U.S. is the same thing. It's like, why are we not spending more money on, care and all this stuff? But yeah, I agree. Thanks. And finally, in the big book of Humane, who makes this thing called, they make this thing called the AI pin. And we talked about it before, I think, and it costs $700. So they're basically, Humane, who makes it, is warning customers to stop using the charging pod immediately. Humane claimed that the third-party battery cells in the charge case are faulty and could pose a fire safety risk. I mean, do you know what it takes to get people to get them to say that? Humane claimed that there was only a single report of a faulty charging pod, but they said they're trying to find a new vendor and they're offering 2 free months of their subscription to users. I'm like, well, how can I use your subscription if I can't charge the thing? Thanks. But anyway, the case is listed as out of stock and so forth. The company was already trying to sell itself off to the highest bidder, but users of the pin said it gets really hot. Maybe it didn't blister your flesh, but it was uncomfortable. The AI pin is just, if you don't know what it is, it's a little box that you pin onto your clothes. And basically it's, you ask it questions and it gives you answers, and it has a laser projector that displays things on the palm of your hand or whatever you want it to project on. And you can ask for like guidance or a map or whatever, or, have it put your text up on the palm of your hand or what have you. But it can handle your calls and all this kind of stuff. But apparently, despite it being an actual hot item for sale, it's been apparently hot enough to get in trouble. It was also hot enough to get them to self-value the company at $700 to $1 billion with a B dollars. But it was also hot enough to burst into flames, which might, toss a wet blanket on the hot product and the sale. Now, I used to know a guy that bought Jaguar cars that burst into flames because he would look for the news reports that said a car burst into flames, and it was notorious. And he would go offer them some really low amount of money for the car that had caught on fire, and they were usually so scared of it they wanted to get rid of it. Same thing here, but it sounds like a product we might see in a few years when all the bugs are worked out. But in the meantime, I'm going to spend my $700 on bourbon, if I had $700, that is. But please help contribute to the Doug Bourbon Foundation. But only you can prevent me from not having bourbon. Anyway, I will next be live at the Cyber Warfare Conference in Jyväskylä in Finland on the 27th of June. If you're going to be around, let me know and we can connect or whatever. But until next time, thank you, Aaron. Sorry I made you cut short because I went so long. And that is the cybersecurity news.